sit back, enjoy, and please give a very, very big Irish welcome to Ehsan Dashti, the founder of Triton.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Guys, I'm first show you why you win in the game tonight. Okay, so it's a very important thing. I'm doing it tonight like that. Okay, so first thing, thanks for having me. Great. I mean, I never had an introduction. That's a third record. This crazy, super introduction. I'm really speechless. And I need to say, I mean, we're at Triton. We are. You all hear me, right? That's all right like that, right? Okay. Yeah. So good. Okay. So we at Triton. We are strongly believe in knowledge and education. That is actually the main thing that makes a reef keeper successful. And I'm very, very proud that we have partners like Seahorse that not only carry the brand, they also carry actually the philosophy that we have behind it. And thanks for that. Applause for them too, please, because that's a really great job that they do. Thanks a lot. So okay, so let's go. Like Keelan said, we're trying to get focused on a Q&A. I know you possibly have a lot of questions and brought them with you, and a lot of you probably driving far away. So we try to get the presentation itself a bit shorter. And I'm actually talking today. Let's see if that's going to work. I hope so. Oh, my brilliant phone. Okay, so let's go. Today the talk is practical modern reef keeping. Okay, so I need to say something that actually modern is a word that, you know, is a bit overused in our industry, sadly, over the years. And I a long time really not liked it anymore. But I'm going to tell you today that we actually made that word mean something again. Okay, it's a bit like scientific and you know, responsible and sustainable. All the things in the past were a bit like misused, but in the moment, it's getting really better from that point. So the main thing I'm going to tell you today is I'm not going to do any advertising, even if it's a Triton talk and now, and it will be always a bit of advertising, but I don't want to advertise the system today. I just want to explain to you how you can use some parts of actually a way of thinking, which we call the modern reef keeping movement, to use it on your tank and get it better. It's nice that all of you are Triton reef keepers, but even if you wouldn't be, you know, the kind of reef keeping that we actually invented would even help you. So it's not that I'm going crazy on Triton and how good we are and stuff like that, but I want to, I need some examples, and that's Triton examples for sure, right? Because I'm not going advertising other companies, right? It's quite normal. Anyway, so it's a three-part talk to understand why we're modern in reef keeping. A lot of you need to understand a bit about where we're coming from, right? So it is about the past and the present of reef keeping. And it's a very simple talk, so I'm not trying to be super scientific, but are allowed to ask any scientific question that you have, okay? That's not point. But keep it for the Q&A. I think otherwise we'll not hit in, like, you know, the timing. I will go crazy on science, and that's just, you know, sometimes a bit too much. So left it a bit simpler than the scientific talks that I do. Anyway, so history of our company, I'm sure not everybody knows that we're existing since 2008. And I made up my company because of words like modern and stuff. And I'm a reef keeper, so I actually wanted something that is modern. I wanted something that is scientific. I wanted it, and there were people selling it to me, right? But my point was, it's not really scientific, and it's not really modern. It's just not what it should be, right? So we thought, my wife and me, my dad and my mom, we thought, look, there need to be something. We need to make it somehow more scientific, somehow more modern and transparent. And that's actually what we call the beginning of the modern reef keeping movement. And it started 2008 when we have the HPLC and the Triton Method set up together. Okay, so that's something that I'm coming to later on. It's important. 2009, we developed the first Lani LED, which was like the first Lani LED lamp that was proven actually to work over SPS tank. We had 2012, the first ICP. 2013, the first trace element solution that you could actually add trace elements, measure and replace them, and not like just put them in and we'll try and error. Second ICP, 2014, and then we have a third ICP now, so I'm not going to list that. Triton Envoy franchise. Core 7, 2016, very special. And 2017, we brought the Tetra packs, so that we call them the green packs. That's actually the new packaging, which is sustainable. First company doing this. So brief overview. Brief overview also about what is reef keeping. So what all of you actually need to do somehow to get things right. And I always have a triangle actually, but we now have a bit of a better picture for it. So it's a table, okay? And the table and the top of it is actually your aquarium. It's the biology on it, okay? The biology is on that table and you have 3 legs, okay? And I'll come later on to this picture again. What you need to do is you need to get all the legs actually balanced. So this is what a reef keeper do. He's having filtration, light, and chemistry, and you try to balance them so that the biology is not falling off that table, okay? So what you have is you'll have like millions of little factors that actually, you know, play their role, and you know that chemistry is one of the most messed up ones, okay? I will tell you later on what actually happens when you mess up one of them. This will happen. So imagine you wouldn't have the light in your tank. No light. It won't work, right? Every coral will die, except the corals that don't need light, but normally that don't work, right? So the same counts for filtration and chemistry. Very important. Imagine you always need to balance them. So you need to do something, and you need to know what actually is happening with them. So it's easy to know what's happening with your light. When your light is off, it's off, right? Easier. But with chemistry, everything was a bit different. So actually, is it going to work? Yeah. Where have we come from? I'm going through that quickly. In the past, okay, there are like millions of ways how you keep a reef tank. They're still there, you know, so it's not gone, right? The problem with that is you have like a real puzzle that everybody needed to put together on his own. Like there was some guys that gave you something for calcium, and then there was the other guy that built your filter, and the other guy built your lamp, and you know, one other guy is having a pump, and you know, all these things will mix together. So what you end up is just putting something together on your own, like do it yourself, that makes your aquarium work, right? Which is okay. It was like trial and error time. So people were just really fresh to it. And it's not too long ago, you know? It's just like quite, let's say, you know, young industry that we have. We call that the time dinosaurs ruled Earth. Some other people will call that the time Steve was born. Anyway, but sorry, man. There are still the dinosaurs around, I'm quite sure. But it was actually a time where nobody really knows about water chemistry. So it was a totally, you know, a guesswork of things. So people had opinions, but there was no real, you know, science behind it. We're just like, okay, you know, we do this and we do that, and we do this try, and then if something goes wrong, we do a water change. It was like a brilliant idea. Doing a water change was always good. Just do it, because if we do something, put something too much in there, we just do a water change. Everybody agreed on that, but it wasn't really a solution. It was like, because we are all blind, running that chemistry side, like putting in there whatever somebody gives us, we don't even know what it was. We just said, okay, so maybe do a water change should be better for my tank. And a very intelligent man, Russell Kelly, called that a cry for help, right? So this was one of the things why we actually said we don't want to do a water change anymore. There is some problem with that, okay? And modern reef keepers see it also like that. And I will explain you also later on why. So all the things changed with the modern reef keeping movement, 2008. when we brought the HPLC, it was the first time that people could really look into the chemistry. Okay, and there is the table later on again, and I explain you what actually will happen. But also at the same time, we created the modern reef keeping method, the Triton method. Okay, and I know for a lot of you, it's just like a guideline that you follow, and that's absolutely okay. I really like that part of it. It's a guideline, you do it, you're happy with your tank. This is what actually the goal was. But you need to understand one thing. It's now time to also tell you that it's actually the base of our science behind it. Okay, so you do this and you'll be all right, that's okay. But we in the back do real science on this stuff. So you know now that it's actually a puzzle and the do-it-your-way style people did their aquariums before. So there were no rules, right? And the Triton method is a standard, is a ruly thing. So all of you guys are doing actually the same things to your tank, okay? And that helps us to do science. So imagine you would have two cars, or let's say you will have two kind of like fuel, like petroleum, and you would like to know which one is better for your car, okay? You would take two exactly the same cars and fill them with different fuel and just go, right? That's something that all of you would do. You wouldn't take two different cars, right? Because that's no standard. So if you take two cars, your information is screwed. No point to make this fuel or that fuel better. But if you have exactly the same cars, two of them, you're all right. The same thing is the Triton method for us. It's a very important point of it, okay? So all of you are doing exactly the same thing. So if I find one of you having any problem, and I find on my test that is maybe vanadium is too high, we possibly know that vanadium would be a problem. And if 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 of you have the same problem and vanadium is high, we know that vanadium caused something, okay? And where it's coming from and stuff like that. So if you don't have a scientific standard, you don't do science. And right now, we are the only ones having actually a method set up like that and doing scientific work. Okay, it's a very important part because science was also a misused word. Okay, so people tell you, oh, it's scientifically a super amino acid and whatever, but a modern reef keeper would be very skeptical with something like that. Okay, anyway, here's something that is coming later on to that also. So you know that we solved a big problem with testing seawater on an ICP. Okay, I know there are a lot of people out there. They're just saying, "Oh yeah, we have an ICP. We do an ICP test." When we started, everybody was laughing about us. They said like, "Oh, come on, the ones who were saying like, who needs that? What bullshit?" Sorry to say, right? But we had an ICP testing and we have nice tanks, And the other part said ICP testing is impossible with seawater. Okay. And it was true. It was impossible. It was, clocking up everything and stuff. But we solved the problem with it. You need to understand, if you have an ICP, you put it somewhere, that don't mean that you can measure seawater. That don't mean that you can measure anything. It's not a machine that you can buy and it's doing what you want. It's a bit like an oven. So, you buy an oven, you're not a baker. You're not. You need to have like a recipe and, passion, whatever. And that's the truth about it. So also these words will get misused in future. So be aware, that that's actually not happening. Also, you need to understand that this is still where we have come from, that when you have the ICP and you can measure seawater, still you have the problem that you don't know what's happening. So when you actually don't have a scientific method that tells you, gives you some data, you will end up in not knowing what to do with that data. So you measure something, you have high vanadium. There's no book about that. It's just because we are the first ones that did it. So at the end of the day, now we have over 17,000, nearly 18,000, right? People online. We have over 100,000 tests done. All this data that you created with us, thanks for that, actually helps us to do real more science. It helps the reef keeper again. That's modern reef keeping, you know. We're all a part of this modern reef keeping movement. And that's actually what makes me so happy that people are really doing it with us, you know. I mean, I can't thank you more for that. Anyway, what we have learned, that's actually the guidelines. We're coming to the table again, okay? So, told you all the things about the past and a bit of the present and where we are. Now look at the table. So, the point is, you remember that if we take away the light of that table, we switch off the light, that thing will be uncontrollable. You know, you can do whatever you want with chemistry, you can do whatever you want with filtration, you're not able to keep an aquapora or another coral that needs light, right? So you're actually messing up the tank when you get one of these things uncontrolled. But to be honest, in the past, exactly that was the case, okay? So chemistry was absolutely uncontrolled. You had 6.8% knowledge about water chemistry. So for a scientist, that means that we had just lucky people around with, you know, doing something to the tank, not knowing what the chemistry is in there. You could have lead, you could have arsenic, you could have whatever, tin or, you know, and you would never find the reason for it. You would do a water change, sure, just to make sure that nothing happens, but there was really no, you couldn't even see that leg, you know, you're just blind. So at the end of the day, it's super difficult to keep an aquarium without knowledge of chemistry or seeing the chemistry leg. It's as important as light. You imagine how important that is. So modern reef keeping is different to that, right? You can do water tests and stuff to prevent things like that. You know, you can return to balance by adding or, you know, working with special tools. Okay, very important. A modern reef keeper look at things like tools. Okay, I always say, like, who of you would use a screwdriver to eat a steak, right? So everything is having somehow its, what do you say? Is there a word like reasonability or something like that? Can you say that? Yeah. So it's you know, it's used for an aquarium. A water change is also something like that. So you look at it, and if it's good for your tank, you use it, right? So if there is a supplementation thing, so if your calcium is missing, right, we put calcium in there. If, like, let's say there is lead in our water, we would do a water change, right? Because then is the time for water change. If copper is in your tank, there's no need to do a water change, okay? There's something else that you can do. So a modern reef keeper would always think about what I'm doing when. Very important, okay? He's not going just there and just putting stuff in his tank or doing blindly a water change, okay? Just important thing. Let's go through some case studies for that cases. So you can see it here. That's something that's very typical for our industry, okay? You have something that is actually, you know, a trace element mix, okay? And I mean, some of you would be like reef keepers before Triton, okay? So can somebody here tell me who have had actually added trace element mixes to his tank? Is there anybody? You can just, I'm not going to. Yeah, correct. Okay, so who of you would be okay with mixing calcium and magnesium and, let's say, alkalinity? That's not possible, but let's say it would be possible. You'll mix it in one bottle, and then you add 10 milliliters of on 100 liter of tank water every day. Who of you would do that? Like, nobody, right? It's stupid because we measure calcium, we measure alkalinity, we'd add what is needed, right? But that's not the same thing. You know? It's just, you did actually, one and the same person did the right thing and the wrong thing, you know? Like, it's very strange, but if you look at it, it's just the unknowledge that we had. We just did it. We know trace elements are important, but there was no way for us to add them like we want them to be added, right? So that's something that is actually out of date. That's not modern. You know, you're not putting in the tank something that you can't measure. Okay. Another thing, water changes. So before, again, I'm not talking about now. I'm very happy you are Tritonized somehow. But who of you thought that, you know, you add in trace elements when you're doing a water change? Nobody. Truly not. Yeah, in the past. I mean, not now, you know. So that's not really right, you know. And you know what? It's not the point being right or wrong. The point is you need to know it. You can't just believe it. That's not modern, right? We don't believe in something that is just written on a box, right? We just look at it. We can now measure it. So I'm okay if you believe that, but you have the power now to prove it to yourself. Is there any trace element? And if it's not there, is there a reason for me to do a water change? You know, if that's the reason why you did it, right? The same counts for like getting things out of the tank, right? Like phosphate, for example. 1 milligram of phosphate, okay, you 10% water change, you will end up with 0.9 milligram. That's not really helpful, right? But because in the past it was so, you know, it was like a tradition to do water change. People just did it. It wasn't wrong from a scientific point of view, but now things have changed. Now they are modern, really modern, and you need to somehow get that into your daily work. Like I said, modern reef keepers are skeptical. Very important. I hope you are all skeptical. Even what I'm saying is not like, you know, the total truth just for Dennis, you know. So, and you're not allowed for any question, right? But, you know, that's very Australian. I'm sorry, that's an Australian slide, and they all laughed. I can see that's not working with you, but that's okay. It's an Australian thing. Anyway, you know, there are people doing marketing hypes. There's a big marketing thing going in our industry, and it's always based on that word science, modern, you know, super pure, stuff like that. A modern reef keeper, don't just believe that. You know, it's just like, look at the superpower, you know, whatever woman can take for their eyebrows thing. You know, you have it everywhere, advertisement. You know, it's advertisement, like 10 times more mascara or whatever it's called. The same thing we have too. So, you know, don't just go for something that is actually looking like that. It's just like, yeah, you know, I'm not sure if you can read it, but there's written like promotes unicorns, you know. It's a hyper super thing, right? So we have a lot of things like that, but they're okay. You can, again, believe that they are good, but do me a favor, work scientific. If you add something to your tank, carry out a test to find out if that's really a good thing for it. It could also have something in there that is bad, you know. So that's actually a very important thing to know. Summing it up, it would be, you know, you're saving money too because of your knowledge. It's not the point that makes me really happy about, you know, modern reef keeping, but it's true. So you just use what you need. You know, you're not going to buy things and add them, then water change them out. Things like that are very important. The one thing that is very important to this thing is you're buying something that you know is in the bottle. Very important. In the past, a trace element mix, you couldn't test for trace elements. It's a very good, you know, situation for you, or maybe for me to sell you tap water, you know, because you can't test for it. It's a horrible thing, but it was the truth. Anyway, looking at all this practical, you know, or modern reef keeping movement thing that is going on, there is also a really proven thing to it. So I'll call it the proven side of it, or what you can reach with reef keeping like that. Again, I'm really happy that actually I have some pictures of my tank, and my tank is not existing anymore. I'm sorry, but I'm very happy that, you know, for your words, really got me nearly crying. Thanks. You know, before. Anyway, a modern reef keeper can feel the pulse of his tank. That means that, you know, in the past you always search for answers while asking people like Keelan and Steve and me and Vince to you know, help you out when there is a problem. Right now, you are actually asking yourself. It's a much better situation, you know? So you are knowing your tank much better than we do, right? So when you actually are involved as much into the knowledge of your water chemistry and the knowledge of your tank, you can help yourself much better than that, okay? We also do a lot of scientific work out in the field. That's actually a Cairns marine diver. It's in Australia. And he's collecting a sample, right? With the corals that then get exported. So we have actually, they have data. You know, people are, you know, using us, you know, for their own scientific work. They have data of the corals where they are collected. So in future, we will have data coming with your coral, and you can keep it in the tank. That's a brilliant thing. You know, it's a lot of work, truly. We are doing it for 10 years, but it's something that in future will help all of us to get better results with our corals. Just to show you some of them, that's my old tank. Sadly, like I said, it's broken down because we'll leave to Australia and we can't take it with us. Yeah, so actually it's a nice tank. You know, I really loved it. But what is very special to it is things that wouldn't have before really possible. So you can see an aquapora, and it's not an easy to keep aquapora up here, okay? And it's the downside of it. And when you look at that part here, this aquapora is growing under the rock, okay? In no light, okay? Just remember the legs, right? It's growing under the rock in between a gap, and that was something that I never have seen before in any of my other tanks. Same thing here, right? You can see a coral that is actually a humilis, a really sun-loving coral. That's the surface of my tank. Okay, it's growing out of water, but it's also growing on the rock with polyps, on that rock in shadowish area, right? And things like that are pretty amazing for a reef keeper to see if it's happening in the tank, because it's even sometimes not happening in the sea, right? So it's really, really strange stuff. That's a picture of the tank. It's a before and after pic. So that's actually 1.5 years before that picture here. Okay, so again, there are some things that I, as a reef keeper, like really much to that tank. Is, for example, that this coral is growing downwards. Okay, can you see them? Growing pits going down. And I mean, yeah, it's a really big hammer up there. Another one, just to let you know. So if you follow the rules, that's the tank in the beginning. You can still see some algae and, you know, little corals. You can look at that coral here, please. That's a good coral to look at, yeah? Can you see them? It's a bit like, it's a greenish one, right? And that's actually the tank after 2 years. It was a frag, right? So it's not a frag anymore. Anyway, so that's actually after 3 years growing. We cut it out of that tank at the end, I think, 175 kilos of raw coral mass. So, you know, without like actually just cuttings, little this size cuttings, okay? And then it was 6 years old, and then we broke it down, right? It was a lot of coral in there, really a lot. It's crazy, crazy amount. Anyway, things like that happens too. Good example why actually you should do a water change. There's still sound on there, sorry for that. But yeah, that's a clam. The clam is 1 meter in size, 70 kilos heavy. Yeah, and then all this little pixel is not because of the, yeah, spawn in the tank. Yeah, and a little one do it too. Yeah, but that actually, yeah, it happens, I think 3 times, three times. And yeah, that's a really good reason to do a water change, honestly. It's looking like milk, and the fish are gluing to the glass and looking outside because they can't see anything inside. And they're looking really crazy because the eyeball is always like ditched, and it's funny thing. Anyway, but yeah, if something like that happens to you, switch off all the pumps and just suck out the surface of the tank, because all the eggs will go up. okay? But you will only have eggs if the clam is very big. Otherwise, it's just sperm, which is not as bad. Okay, and we are also doing, like, on the other side, really scientific work, like with the Horniman Museum. I'm not sure if somebody knows Jamie Craigs, brilliant guy, love him, super British. And yeah, he's a great guy. He's very, like, yeah, focused on coral spawning, so aquapora spawning. And he's using all over Triton, and we support him very much. And you can see that you can have a really crazy scientific success with you know, spawning things in aquariums, because that's actually aquapora eggs. Okay, they're 1 day old, and that are aquapora polyps, just single polyps there swimming around. Okay, that's, yeah, I think that that's just 1 day after they actually get a polyp. Then the same polyp after 3 months, and then great success of Horniman after a year. That's the coral out of that egg. That's really crazy stuff. Yeah, really love it. Okay, and he's right now on hybridizing them. So he's actually creating new corals, which is pretty amazing. But that's something that you can do. It's also very good. That's something that we do. We trying to get our business more sustainable. Our industry needs to be more sustainable. We're taking things out of the sea, and we actually don't want to be the ones that destroy anything, right? We love it. We want to have that at home, but we need to also care for whatever happens in the oceans. And you know about the plastic problem, and we're doing the Tetra Paks now, and you know, it is a very hard job to do them, honestly. Nobody is doing chemistry in Tetra Paks on this planet. And we know that, you know, we were aware of that's getting a problem for us, but it's actually the only right thing to do. 95% less plastic, for example. Another thing that we do for sustainability is fish that are catched with cyanide. They're still around, a lot of them, especially from Indonesia and the Coral Triangle. And, you know, we're working on a test with Cancer Marine to make it possible to actually detect which fish is caught with cyanide. Very important, because you need to understand that's something that we learned from you. A lot of people are coming up to us and saying, look, Ehsan, all my corals are really suffering. So I'll send in a test, so what's happening? And we see that there is something. You know, when you have problems with your corals, water chemistry, very often helpful to know that there's something. You know, there will be something wrong. With fish, that's not the case. With fish, all the 100,000 tests we've done, a lot of them don't have any problem with the water chemistry, but they have problem with the fish. Fish is suddenly dying, lying on the ground, breathing. And that's what actually made us look for the reason for that. It couldn't be actually the error of the reef keeper, right? It needs to be something external. And when I was in Australia once, and I met Lyle and his father is working for a long, long time for sustainability in collection. And he told me about the cyanide thing. And we started to work together to find a way to detect actually the cyanide caught fish before they enter our trade, right? Because that's actually a horrible way to do it. Now I can explain to you more if you want to ask later on. Anyway. Most important thing, modern reef keeper has much more time to relax and enjoy his tank, okay? Because you just do whatever you need to do, okay? And you know what you need to do to reach your goals, very important. And you can relax and actually learn out the biology part from the tank, which I'm honestly saying 90% of you all want, right? So you don't need to learn chemistry, honestly. I know it's boring for all of you, but you know, the biology part is really the nice part of it. So if you want to know about chemistry, you can always ask. But yeah, the biology part, much, much nicer. Anyway, thank you very much.